The Miami skyline glittered like a diamond necklace against the velvet night, its neon pulse humming through the humid air. At 38, Elise Harper stood at the edge of the rooftop restaurant, her emerald dress catching the breeze, her dark hair pinned with precision. She wasn't just a guest at this party, she was its architect. Every detail of her mother's 70th birthday celebration, a lavish tour across Miami's most exclusive venues, bore her signature. From the private yacht docked at Biscayne Bay to the curated art gallery tour in Wynwood, Elise had orchestrated it all through her company. Harper Events. The contracts, the menus, the floral arrangements, every penny funneled through her business. A gift to her mother, Celeste Monroe, a woman whose charisma could command a room and whose smile could cut glass. But as Elise stepped into the restaurant, the air shifted. The long table, draped in ivory linens and lit by chandeliers, was perfection itself. Gold scripted place cards gleamed beside each crystal wineglass, each napkin folded with military precision. She scanned the table, her heart steady but her eyes sharp. 13 seats, 13 names, none of them hers. The realization didn't hit like a wave, it crept like a shadow. Elise's stilettos clicked against the marble floor as she moved closer, her pulse calm but her mind racing. She wasn't surprised. Not really. This wasn't the first time Celeste had pushed her out of the frame. But here, in the heart of Miami, at an event Elise had built from the ground up, the absence of her name felt like a deliberate erasure. Darling, Celeste's voice sliced through the chatter. Honeyed but razor-edged, she glided toward Elise, her silver gown shimmering like moonlight on water. You look exhausted. Why don't you sit this one out? No need to stay for the whole evening. The words were wrapped in concern, but their weight was unmistakable, a polite dismissal, a nudge toward the exit. Beside her, Nathan, Elise's ex-husband, cleared his throat, his eyes fixed on his glass. Maybe someone miscounted, he muttered, his voice barely audible over the clink of silverware. His arm brushed against Lila, the poised young woman at his side, her glossy hair and tailored suit screaming ambition. Celeste's new, legacy partner, as she called her. Lila was the shiny new face of the Monroe brand. Lila's gaze flicked to Elise, then away, as if she were a stranger. Elise didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't even raise her voice. She gave a small nod, turned, and walked toward the hallway leading to the staff prep area. The restaurant's opulence faded behind her, replaced by the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint clatter of dishes. She paused before a full-length mirror, studying the woman staring back, flawless makeup, a dress chosen to blend seamlessly into her mother's world. And yet, no seat at the table. A server, Javier, approached, his steps hesitant. Ms. Harper, he said, voice low, glancing over his shoulder. Your name was on the seating chart this morning. I saw it myself. But this afternoon, a new one came through. Your name, it was gone. I'm sorry. His apology was soft, but it landed like a stone. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed what Elise already knew. This was no mistake. Memories flickered like old film reels. At 12, Celeste had taken all of Elise's cousins to a Broadway show in New York for Christmas, leaving her behind with a flimsy excuse about a fever Elise didn't have. At 16, Celeste had whispered that Nathan wasn't built for the long haul, only to steal the spotlight at their wedding years later, ensuring the photographer captured more of her than the bride. At 30, Elise's first feature in Vogue, a profile on her rising event planning empire, had been mailed to Celeste. Framed and gift-wrapped, it was returned, unopened, labeled, miscellaneous press. And now, at 38, in the city where Elise's name was synonymous with elegance, she was invisible. She returned to the dining area, the laughter and clinking glasses folding into a mocking hum. Celeste stood at the head of the table, raising a flute of champagne, her smile radiant as if she were starring in her own movie. Elise lingered at the edge, unnoticed, until the chatter dipped. She stepped forward, her voice steady, cutting through the air like a blade. Looks like I'm not family. 12 heads turned. Lila blinked, her perfect composure faltering. Nathan's shoulders tensed, but he didn't look up. Celeste's smile twitched. Just for a second, before she recovered. No one stood. No one spoke her name. Elise turned and walked away, her heels echoing in the silence. As she passed Javier, he gave her a nod, not pity, but recognition. It was the kindest gesture she'd received all night. In her suite at the Fontainebleau, Elise didn't sleep. The room was a masterpiece of her own design, crisp linens, floor-to-ceiling views of the Atlantic, crown molding that whispered luxury. But it felt like a cage. She stood on the balcony, the ocean breeze tangling her hair, and opened her tablet. The itinerary glowed on the screen, every line bearing her initials. vendor contracts, payment confirmations, emails with her staff. Her fingerprints were everywhere. Yet, in the public-facing documents, she was a ghost. A cream envelope slid under her door at dawn, its gold trim catching the light. Inside, the press itinerary for the week's events, interviews, photo shoots, a red carpet walk at the gala. Elise's name was absent, not even as the event producer. Lila's name appeared twice, Celeste's legacy partner, and brand liaison. Elise called her publicist, Marcus, her voice calm but unyielding. He answered, his tone brittle. Elise, I thought. Celeste said you didn't want to be in the press portion. That you were overwhelmed and wanted to stay behind the scenes. Overwhelmed. The word stung. Not because it was true, but because it was a lie Celeste had crafted with surgical precision. Last month, she'd called Elise, overbearing, during a client call. Last year, it was too green for PR. Elise thanked Marcus and hung up, her fingers steady as she opened her leather-bound journal. She wrote, "They don't just want me gone. They want me erased." The memory of her childhood crept in. Unbidden. At 9, Celeste had organized a school talent show, assigning Elise a solo performance, a poem about stars and dreams. The night before, Celeste pulled her aside. "I gave your part to Sarah," she said. "She needs the confidence. You're strong enough to handle it." Elise had smiled, because that's what good daughters did. But she wasn't 9 anymore. Later that morning, Elise walked into the conference suite where the lighting crew was setting up for Celeste's birthday tribute. Lila was already there, practicing poses at the podium, her laughter bright as she charmed the AV team. Elise asked for the speaking notes. The coordinator handed her a folder labeled, Lila, Keynote. Celeste swept in, her smile as polished as the marble floors. "Oh, Elise, I thought we discussed this," she said, her voice dripping with faux warmth. "Lila's giving the toast this year. She's got a fresh perspective. Something the press loves." Elise didn't argue. She excused herself, returned to her suite, and opened her tablet's archive folder. Every contract, every email, every vendor confirmation, she photographed them, labeled them, saved them. She wasn't reacting. She was preparing. Because Elise Harper wasn't just a daughter. She was a woman who built empires. And empires don't crumble without a fight. The Miami night throbbed with a pulse only a city of decadence could sustain. Its skyline a jagged crown of neon and glass against the inky horizon. Elise Harper stood in her suite at the Fontainebleau. The ocean's restless churn a faint murmur beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. At 38, she was no stranger to high-stakes games. But tonight felt different. Her tablet glowed on the desk. A digital arsenal of evidence she'd spent days compiling, emails, contracts, payment records, vendor confirmations, all bearing her name, her company, her sweat. Harper Events wasn't just a business, it was her empire. And every cent of her mother's lavish 70th birthday celebration flowed through it. Celeste Monroe, the woman who could charm a room into submission and wound with a smile, had underestimated her daughter. Elise wasn't the fragile shadow Celeste had painted her to be. She was a strategist. And tonight, she was rewriting the narrative. Elise's fingers moved with the precision of a surgeon as she dialed the first number. The manager of the private yacht docked at Biscayne Bay answered, his voice warm with familiarity. "Ms. Harper, all set for the sunset cruise? We've got the champagne chilled just as you requested." Elise's tone was smooth, laced with steel. "I'm afraid there's been a change. Antonio, Harper Events is canceling the booking. Please process the full refund to our account by morning." A stunned pause followed. Then a flurry of questions. But Elise was already onto the next call. The art gallery in Wynwood, with its curated Basquiat exhibit for Celeste's VIP tour, was next. Cancel the reservation, she said, her voice calm but unyielding. Send a deposit back to Harper Events. The rooftop venue in South Beach. The bespoke catering for the gala. The private jazz quartet for the after-party. Each piece of the Monroe celebration unraveled with a single polite command. Every contract bore her signature. Every deposit her company's funds. By the time she set her phone down, the event was a house of cards in a Category 5 hurricane. And Elise was the storm. She didn't pause to gloat. Opening her laptop, she drafted an email to Tara Coleman, a journalist she'd known since their early days hustling in Chicago's cutthroat media scene. Tara was different, quiet, principled, with a nose for truth and a disdain for Miami's polished lies. Elise attached a zip file labeled Monroe Gala. Evidence, screenshots of Celeste's email to the PR team instructing them to keep Elise out of visuals for brand clarity. The revised press itinerary listing Lila as legacy partner and brand liaison in Elise's place. Bank statements showing Harper Events as the sole funder of the event. And a time-stamped seating chart with Elise's name erased. I don't want a hit piece. Elise wrote. I want the truth to have room to breathe. You'll know what to do. She hit send, closed the laptop, and poured herself a glass of bourbon from the minibar. The amber liquid burned her throat, grounding her, sharpening her focus. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. The fallout ignited at the gala. A dazzling spectacle at the Perez Art Museum, where Miami's elite mingled under a canopy of crystal chandeliers and abstract sculptures. Elise watched from the shadows near the catering alcove, her navy velvet gown blending into the dim light, her presence unnoticed by the glittering crowd. The room was a sea of couture gowns and tailored tuxedos, champagne flutes catching the light like fireflies. Celeste stood at the center, resplendent in a crimson gown that hugged her like a second skin. Her laughter a carefully rehearsed performance. Lila, her anointed successor, sat at her right, her smile as polished as the marble floors. Her every gesture a mirror of Celeste's calculated charm. Nathan, Elise's ex-husband, slouched beside her, his discomfort palpable but his silence deafening. The dessert course arrived, a towering passion-fruit pavlova, flown in from a Michelin-starred patisserie in New York at Elise's insistence. Its delicate layers a testament to her meticulous taste. As servers placed the plates, Javier, the head waiter, approached Celeste's table, his expression a mix of apology and resolve. Mrs. Monroe, he said, voice low but firm, I'm sorry, but we need a new payment method to continue service. The corporate card was declined. The words sliced through the room like a shattered glass. Celeste's laugh was sharp, almost manic. That's absurd. Try it again. Javier didn't waver. We did, ma'am. It's been revoked. Heads turned. Whispers slithered through the crowd. Celeste's face drained of color, her fingers tightening around her clutch until her knuckles whitened. Nathan shifted, his eyes darting to Lila, who froze, her perfect composure cracking. A board member, Richard, leaned in, his voice a low rumble. Is there a problem, Celeste? She waved him off, her smile a fragile mask. But the room had shifted. The air was thick with curiosity, the kind that fuels gossip columns and X-posts. Elise slipped out before the scene collapsed, her heels silent on the polished floor. She didn't need to watch the wreckage. She'd built the bomb. By sunrise, the chaos was viral. Elise's phone buzzed relentlessly, texts, voicemails, notifications piling up like debris after a storm. Marcus, her publicist, called, his voice clipped with panic. Celeste's team is spinning this hard. Elise, they're saying you snapped. That the pressure got to you. That you're unstable. There's a blog post already. Event planner meltdown at Monroe Gala. It's on page 6 and trending on X. You need to respond before it snowballs. Elise didn't answer right away. She sat on her balcony, the Miami sun spilling across the horizon, and sipped her espresso, its bitterness a perfect match for the moment. Opening her voice memo app, she hit record. My name is Elise Harper, she said, her voice steady as granite. And I'm not breaking, I'm building. She saved the file, labeled it, Truth, and turned her phone face down. 2 days later, Celeste announced a reconciliation brunch at the Setai. A carefully staged affair with hand-picked guests and select press. All velvet upholstery, smoked salmon canapes, and curated playlists. The invitation list was exclusive. A who's who of Miami's power players, philanthropists, influencers, a few sympathetic reporters. Elise's name was conspicuously absent. But she didn't need an invitation. She walked into the private dining room unannounced. A black leather folder under her arm. Her crimson blazer a deliberate echo of Celeste's gala gown. The room froze, forks paused mid-air. Conversations severed like a power outage. The air thick with anticipation. Celeste turned in her seat. Her smile tight as a wire. Her eyes flickering with something close to fear. Elise, she said, voice measured. This isn't the time. It never is. According to you, Elise replied, her voice clear, unyielding, cutting through the silence like a blade. She crossed the room, her heels clicking like a metronome. Each step a declaration. She stopped beside Celeste's table, set the folder down with a soft thud, and opened it, page by page, her movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. This, she said, holding up a printed email from Celeste to the PR team, is how you erase someone without saying their name. She read aloud, her tone calm but piercing, each word landing like a dart. Keep Elise out of visuals. Focus on Lila for press optics. She's the right tone for the brand. Murmurs rippled through the room. A journalist's phone blinked red, recording discreetly from a purse. Elise lifted another page, a vendor contract with her signature in bold ink. This is how you fund an empire you're not allowed to enter. She flipped to a payment confirmation. The numbers stark against the white paper. This is what happens when you try to rewrite someone who wrote the story. The final page, a cancellation notice for the yacht. Time-stamped and notarized. And this, she said, her voice steady, as consequence. Celeste stood, her voice trembling with forced calm. Her hands folded to hide their shake. We're family, Elise. You're blowing this out of proportion. Elise tilted her head, her smile faint but sharp, like a blade catching the light. Family doesn't edit you out of existence. I don't need your table, Mother. I brought my own. She closed the folder, its leather snapping shut like a gavel, and turned to leave. At the door, she paused, her silhouette framed against the ocean view. You can keep the spotlight. I'll keep my name. Elise left Miami the next morning, her suitcase packed with dignity rather than souvenirs. The flight to Chicago was smooth. The first-class seat a quiet indulgence she'd earned with years of loyalty points from Harper events. From the plane window, Miami's coastline shrank into a glittering thread. A city of illusions she was ready to leave behind. Back in her Lakeview apartment, the space felt different, not the sleek furniture or the view of the skyline, but the air itself. The old Elise would have unpacked within the hour, organized every detail, chased the chaos away. This time, she let her suitcase sit. She brewed chamomile tea, played Nina Simone's Feeling Good on her vintage turntable, and watched the rain streak across her windows. Peace didn't arrive with fanfare, it slipped in quietly, like a guest who'd been waiting to be invited. A week later, an envelope arrived, no return address, its cream paper heavy with intent. Inside, a note in Celeste's elegant scrawl. I regret how this played out. You're stronger than I thought. No, love, no, Mom, just her name, Celeste, like a signature on a contract. Elise didn't frame it or burn it. She tucked it into the back of her leather-bound journal, where unfinished stories went to rest. It wasn't an apology, it was a concession. And that was enough. Tara's article dropped 10 days later. A measured exposé in the Miami Herald titled, The Cost of Legacy. It laid bare Celeste's campaign to erase Elise. Backed by irrefutable evidence, emails, contracts, timestamps. The comments section exploded. Readers sharing their own stories of family betrayal, of being sidelined for someone shinier, of fighting to reclaim their place. This hit home. One wrote, My mom chose my sister over me for years. Thank you for showing us we can walk away. Another. Elise Harper is a badass. Miami's loss. Chicago's gain. Celeste's team scrambled, issuing vague statements about misunderstandings. But the damage was done. Vendors across Miami stopped taking her calls, citing reputational risk. Lila vanished from the Monroe orbit. Her Instagram suddenly private. Her name absent from the society pages. 6 months later, Elise stood on a pier along Lake Michigan. The Chicago skyline a glittering mosaic behind her. She was overseeing a tech mogul's vow renewal. Her clipboard steady in her hands. Her team buzzing with the kind of loyalty only earned through respect. The air smelled of fresh water and possibility. The kind of clean slate Miami could never offer. A young assistant, barely 20, leaned close, her eyes wide with admiration. You're the one who walked away from the Monroe Gala, right? That was iconic. People still talk about it on X. Elise smiled, her gaze fixed on the horizon. I didn't walk away, she said. I walked forward. That night, she sat at her desk, the city's glow spilling through her windows, and opened her journal. The first entry, once raw with pain, now had a new line beneath it. They tried to unname me. I renamed myself. Healing, she realized, wasn't about forgiving Celeste or Nathan or Lila. It was about refusing to wait for their permission to exist. It was the courage to burn a bridge and build a new one. Stronger, on her own terms, she closed the journal, poured herself a glass of Pinot Noir, and raised it to the woman in the reflection. Not the daughter who'd begged for a seat, but the architect who'd built her own table. This story isn't just mine, it's for every American who's ever felt erased in their own home, their own family, their own life. If you've been told your place is optional, if you've been pushed out to make room for someone else, hear this. You don't have to stay where you're not seen. You can redraw your boundaries, reclaim your name, start over, no matter how late it feels. From the Midwest to the coasts, from small towns to big cities, we've all got a story of fighting to be seen. What's yours? Have you ever had to walk away from people you love to love yourself? Does forgiveness need words, or is it enough to live free? To wake up each day and choose yourself? Drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, Chicago, Miami, Seattle, or somewhere else entirely. Share what this stirred in you. Or if it missed the mark, tell me why. I read every word, and I'm here for it all. If you want more stories, raw, real, human, the kind that make you feel less alone, hit subscribe. The next chapter might just be yours.